Ladies and gentlemen of the Heavy Metal History Podcast, I am here. This is like a part two. If you've already watched part one with the rest of the members of See You Next Tuesday, I'm here with Drew Slavik, the guitar player of See You Next Tuesday. Drew, welcome to the podcast, man.
Hey, thanks for having me, Dustin.
Yeah, man.
Appreciate you. Oh, hey, it says it right down there in the corner.
It's all
I'm
good.
smart.
Yeah, honestly, I've done a few of these too, and like when I have like four or five people on the screen, I'm like, wait, who's who now? And I have to like really quickly just like pop this up and be like, okay,
Yeah.
your name.
Yeah, that's always fun. Yeah, I,
Yeah.
I'm bummed I didn't make it for the other, but like I said, I just had something come up like right at the last second. I'm getting ready to come on, and I'm like, crap.
No, man. No, it's all good. That's why, I'm just glad you took the time to just do it
Yeah.
again. So that way,
Well,
we can
thanks
make it
again for
happen.
having me either way. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when I first hit you up, I told you I had Fox on like way back in 2017,
Yeah.
because
Yep.
Parasites was having a 10-year, I believe.
Yeah, it would have been 10 years at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. And he just happened to be the one that answered the email when I sent it out. I didn't expect anybody to answer because,
Uh,
I knew you guys were just kind of like sporadically playing shows back then, and not like a full blown like, hey, we're back
yeah.
together kind of deal.
I mean,
But
the thing is, See You Next Tuesday was, I've always been kind of it's not like it's my band or anything, but I'm like the project head. You know what I
mhm.
mean? Like when it comes to new ideas or like, booking tours and stuff like that, like it's always my ideas that kind of start everything, and then it's just a matter of getting everybody else on board. So yeah, I mean, back in 2017, I wasn't in it at all. So I mean, the I'm glad that Fox at least gave a shit at the time. I definitely
Yeah,
didn't.
yeah. No, it was fun, man. Like it's weird though because I can't find that episode on Spotify, and I'm still trying to figure out why it's not up. But it's on
Oh, that's weird.
YouTube. Yeah. So,
Huh.
but man, the thing that I like to always start with on this podcast before we get into everything that's going on with the band,
Sure.
tell me a little bit about your personal heavy metal history. Those first bands and records that you remember hearing and listening to that really like shaped, and even some non-metal influences because I can tell it's very apparent on the relapses stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my guitar playing history or like heavy music history, I mean, it started with like Dimebag Darrell and like Tom Morello. I grew up in a small town, and my only experience with music from like, junior or not junior, like middle school, was MTV. So, like I just got what's available then, and Guitar Player magazine and stuff like that. I remember I'm 41 in like a few days, so
All right, we're not
it's
far
a
off on age.
yeah. So it's a different thing nowadays, because if I want to find out about music, you just go to YouTube.
Yep.
Um, but back then you had to find it if you were curious enough to get into something different. And yeah, so I mean, I really started off playing guitar, um, watching people like Tom Morello just making noise on his guitar, and Dimebag Darrell was always one of my favorite guitar players, just an absolute shredder and an innovator too. And that's the thing for me. There's plenty of guitar virtuosos out there that are
Mhm.
just insanely talented at playing guitar, but it's the ones that step out of the box that really um, get rev my engine, if you will,
Yeah.
like the Tom Morello and, like that what is his name? Tim Henson, the dude from
Yep.
Polyphia. Like that dude is one that's newer. Tosin Abasi, same thing, like those guys that really just like invent something new on the guitar. Like they actually bring something absolutely unique to the table. I can't help but be intrigued by that. So I kind of followed that trend when it came up to playing guitar. I got into the weird. My early experiences with music were like Mr. Bungle, Nine Inch Nails, Skinny Puppy, stuff of that nature. Um, then fast forward till, the last few years of high school, really, um, I found Converge.
Oh hell yeah.
Yeah. it was funny because I was walking down memory lane just recently talking about this, but in a nutshell, I was getting my eyebrow pierced at like a tattoo shop. I was like 14 or 15 or something like that. So I guess I was like probably freshman or sophomore, really. But I remember walking into this tattoo shop and Jehovah's Ladder by Converge was playing on the loudspeaker. I remember like walking in as the song started. I don't know if you're familiar with the song, but it
Oh yeah.
starts with those the
Yep.
just it's such a powerful intro. I've always wanted to rip it off. But yeah, like walked in and heard that, and soon after, um, a friend of mine and I went down to the local record shop in Michigan at the time was called Wyatt Earp down in Flint. Down for me because I'm north of Flint even. I'm in the middle of nowhere. So
Wow.
we had to drive about an hour to get to a record shop, and I remember picking up like Calculating Infinity, Coalesce, the 12 Seconds, Revolution, and Just Listening, and a Converge record. I think I actually picked up the Petitioning the Empty Sky at that time. Or was it because I think it was weird because I like kind of delved into Converge in the middle of their height, because
Yep.
about a year after I got into, or a couple years after I got into Converge, no, it had to have been about a year. I remember Jane Doe coming out. You know what I
Yep.
mean? And that
Yep.
was an absolute, that was like the nail in the coffin for me musically. That was such an inspiration sonically and just the composition of it and the tracks that weren't just in your face metal, like Phoenix in Flight, which is heavy, but it's not,
Yep.
and just that record is just, it's an absolute masterpiece. So from there, it was just, I spiraled out of control. I found bands like Rotten Sound and Origin, started getting into, like more tech death and grindcore and things of that nature. And I've never been never been the same since. So
Um, Funny enough, man, I got a interesting story for you. So I was relaying this to Fox on our last episode. I saw you guys like way back in like 2006 or 7 maybe here in
yeah,
Nashville.
okay.
And I remember talking to you for quite a while about Converge because you used to have that Converge sleeve, correct?
Oh yeah, I still got it. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, and I was like, man, I fucking love Converge. And me and you just sat there for like 10, 15 minutes just talking about like our favorite songs and albums. And
awesome.
yeah, that was so fun. And I was expecting a Converge answer, but I didn't think you would like, that would be one of your go-tos. So that's fucking awesome that yeah, because they're still one of
Yeah,
my favorite bands too, man. I mean,
yeah.
they don't miss.
I always talk about them being my gateway band too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they were that pinnacle band for me. Like I remember that moment like it was yesterday, hearing that like aggressive metal, I get. Like I know they were
Yeah.
kind of like metal core or whatever. But I mean Converge kind of always had done their own thing. And I mean, and just from there, like there's so many bands that were coming up during that period. And then you fast forward only a few years because like Jane Doe came out like what, 2000 or 99 or something. It was really
It was
old.
early, yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
But then like 2004, we were just started getting up. Sawtooth Grin had put out a couple records at that point.
Yep.
Number 12 Looks Like You was putting out Rosy Red Sunglasses. And like all this new wave of stuff started happening like simultaneously. It was crazy time for music for sure. A lot of stuff I feel um like Calculating Infinity and Jane Doe were that record for a lot of people, I think.
Yeah.
Like if you asked bands like Sawtooth and Number 12 and all those like crazy chaotic bands that were coming up during that time, I guarantee you Calculating Infinity and Jane Doe were huge influences on just so many records. Because
Yeah,
it was really, you've never heard anything like it until then.
no, no, I same thing for me, man. I remember first hearing it and I just had to like take it all in for a second and be like, I think I need to listen to that again. Like, what did I just fucking listen to?
I
And
remember the first time, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I
no, no,
remember
no,
the
you're
first
good.
time I remember the first time I heard Calculating Infinity, just to kind of say what you're saying, like I listened to that song probably 5 or 6 times in a row
Yeah.
before I went to track 3 on the record. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
that no, that you I was actually about to talk about calculating as well. It's crazy to me that thing came out in 1999. There
Dude,
was nothing that sounded like that in 1999.
not
Insane.
even close either.
Yeah.
Like it was like a spaceship dropped that record down from space, man. It was fucking crazy. But yeah, I always talk about that, like they were a relapse band and
Yeah.
another reason that they were such a heavy catalyst for me getting into heavy music was that flap that they had on the top of those records. I'm sure you remember like going to CD shops and you'd comb the aisle and you'd see the one with the relapse thing and you'd pull it out and be like, fucking cephalic carnage. I'll give it a shot, you
Yeah.
know? Next thing you know, it's like one of the best bands ever. So yeah, I mean, Relapse too, just they were one of those labels for me that just coming up. Like they just released everything I liked.
Yeah.
And they still do. I mean, like Author Punisher is probably one of my favorite bands currently. Like his last two records were such an impact in me as an adult. You know what I mean? Like that's a big deal.
Yeah, I enjoy that band. I still have yet to like figure them out. Like what I mean by that is like I enjoy the music, but sometimes I'm just like, man, what the fuck? That is a lot to listen to. But it's good, man. I definitely think he's pushing some boundaries there with like that coalescent style.
Yeah, seeing Author Punisher live is a treat.
Yeah.
They're coming through Tuesday in a couple days, and I'm trying real hard to make it down there, but it's a 2.5 hour drive for me, so
Oof.
it's tough. But I saw them last year sometime, and man, it's something else because like the low end that's produced by a synthesizer is lower than what like a bass guitar can produce.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like going to a metal show and hearing those running kick drums just beating your chest all night long is different than hearing these like synthesizers that just get down to like your guts. It's an experience, man. If you're teetering on liking him or not, go see him live.
Yeah. Yeah, that's usually what does it for me, man. Like I'll be like, okay, I enjoy this band, and then like if I happen to go see them live and their show's great and they sound great, that's like an automatic game changer for me where I'm like, okay, this band fucking rules now. Like because I had
Hmm.
that correlation of like how they sound live, and that goes like a long way for me. If band sounds like shit live, I'm kind of like, well, I don't know if I feel like listening to them for a while because it's just
It's
like
it,
stuck in my brain.
yeah, it's weird. Like I've had experiences where like I listen to a record a whole bunch of times and I'm pretty
Yeah.
into it. And then I go see a band. I've seen a band live and they're either like if they kill it, obviously I will continue being their fan. But like if they have like a shitty attitude or
Mm,
like they just don't translate the same live. It's hard. Like you go back and listen to the record and it almost feels like tainted, mostly by the shitty attitude thing. Like I don't
yeah.
understand why anybody would have a shitty attitude in general, but especially when people come out and like talk to you at a show.
Yeah. Yeah, I've mentioned this. I'm not naming names, but I've had a
Yeah,
few instances over the years where I've like had guests on the podcast and they were like complete fucking assholes. I just never put their episodes out because I was like, well, not only did it taint me enjoying this band, it's just like
right.
now I have to have this like weird, embarrassing, awkward conversation out there on the internet that I don't
Oh,
want to
yeah,
do.
that would suck.
It's
You
only
know,
happened twice, but you know,
weirdly enough, we were just talking about how much I love Converge.
hmm
I will admit that the one time I did get to meet Kurt and Jacob, we played a show with them years and years ago, probably back in like 2007-ish.
wow.
It was I know Parasite had been out, but I met them too, and they were both assholes to me, and I was just like, whatever, I still love your band.
I
And I don't know if
yeah,
they were just having a bad day, I'm sure they're nice guys, but
right.
whatever I did to trigger something in them, they weren't having it. Or they just didn't care for our band, but whatever. I still love them.
Yeah, I've met Jacob a couple times, and yeah, he was always cool. Like I
Oh,
talked to
that's
him about
good.
MMA a few times, and I got lucky enough to have him on the podcast a few years ago, and he was rad. But yeah, I
Right
mean,
on.
that's the other thing you have to take into account, man. Maybe somebody's just having a bad day and you never fucking know.
Yeah, I've been there too, you know what I mean? Like I've
Yeah.
definitely had people say they met me on the road and they didn't think I was, I was either an asshole or I was just really quiet or something, which, generally I'm that guy that's pretty quiet at shows. Like, I generally keep to myself and sit in the back and warm up and stuff like that. So I'm not necessarily the most chatty Cathy. And again, sometimes that translates as negative. So I apologize to anybody that thinks I'm ignoring them. I'm just sometimes I get in my head, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, man. I'm sure like playing shows every night, you got to make sure, you're like doing your quote unquote job. Not that
Yeah,
it is a job, but you got to you want to put on a good show, man. You got to get in the
for sure.
headspace. Yeah.
And like our songs aren't necessarily the easiest thing to do either. So it's a matter of like getting all the blood flow in my hands and shit.
Yeah.
Like especially nowadays, like being that I'm older than I was, 22 and you could jump around and throw your body around and stuff and it was no big deal. But, I'm 40 and we just played 3 shows a couple of weeks ago in a row and, it's just like roll me off in a fucking gurney after some of those shows, man. But yeah, I mean, I have to stretch and stuff beforehand. My hands can't choke up on me.
Yeah. Yeah, so when I was talking to everybody else, so they'd mentioned that basically by the time you approached them, you had like the whole record done basically.
For
And
distractions,
yes, yeah, that like you had everything written and recorded, I think, except for like Fox's vocals. And
sort of.
I mean, that's kind of what I was asking. Can you like
Yeah, yeah,
explain
yeah,
to me a
yeah,
little
yeah.
more like how all that went,
Um,
what all you had done?
yeah, I had 4 songs written when I finally like kind of realized I was writing a record, which translated to me really showing them. Um, at the time of Distractions, we had a lineup that was Andy, Rick, and Fox and myself because we had played a few shows, like you
Yep.
said, 2017, 2018, I think even 2016, we had played a few shows. So I mean, it's like we had a a band that was together. We're in hiatus any longer. We did that stuff with Wax Vessel, which was really cool. So um we had a living and breathing body, but it was really um like I'd said at the beginning of the podcast, is like the writing has always been spearheaded by me. It's always been what's going on up in Drew's brain that produces See You Next Tuesday music. And yeah, long story short, a bunch of shit happened and I came out of it and needed something to keep my mind occupied, and Distractions was my distraction. Um, and it really just started as like a just that, an exercise to exercise my demons, really, you know what I mean? Like gave me something to do. And I
Yeah.
started playing guitar and guitar more and kind of experimenting more with my studio. Like I had a studio at my house for a few years, mostly just worked on like electronic music, stuff like that. I always had a passion for like making dubstep and stupid shit like that. And I never stopped playing guitar or anything,
Right.
just never really was looking to write a See Next Tuesday record. I didn't have that stuff either. I didn't have like a high gain setup and but anyway, yeah, so I mean Distractions really just started as a project to not drink really. I was I got a little out of control
Yeah.
and and now I'm not. Now I'm in control, so that's always good. But yeah, I had about 4 songs written, and they were mostly just like it's programmed drums, and I had some bass and some guitar tracks laid down, and nothing was like mixed well or anything like that. It was all just kind of putting it together as I was creating songs, and but yeah, it was "Hey Look No Crying" was the song that I showed everybody and was like, oh shit. Drew's writing a record. I had 3 other songs done, and um, yeah, from there it just kind of was like everybody else just kind of sat back and was just like, all right, Drew, do your thing. And over the course of a year and a half, in the background kind of thing, I just existed my life. I went on with my life, and anytime I had an urge, I'd go to my studio and stay up till 2 a.m. and get no sleep and wake up the next day not hungover and I'd write a song or something. So
So this
fast
was all
forward a
like a
year and
very this is like a very cathartic experience for you to like do this huge shift in your life, getting away from all this and like putting it into something more positive.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and I mean there a lot went into the music and that was part of how Relapses even came about. Even the beginnings of just my ideas based around doing a remix album. Why would I even want to do that? It was one of those just like I put so much stuff into distractions that a lot of it people don't even hear or realize is in there. I mean, they're 2 minute songs and I write like 15, 16 riffs in each one. I
Oh,
jam
I know,
packed a
dude.
lot of stuff.
That's always been
And
one of my favorite things about your writing style is like it's just like nonstop riff, but it's
yeah,
composed in such a way that it never feels like a jumbled mess, you know? So you
well,
have
thank
like
you.
this real good attention to composition, I feel like, with the way you write your songs. Um,
I
and
I
it's
I
unique.
definitely
You talk about unique guitar
yeah.
players. You have a very unique style that if I heard you like do some of your crazy like riffing stuff, I'd be like, oh man, that
Thank
sounds
you.
like Drew. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Well, thank you. Yeah, man, I definitely I put in a lot of practice. I've been a guitar nerd my entire life.
Yeah.
I worked at two different guitar shops. My first real job as like an adult out of high school was I worked at a mom and pop guitar shop. And I remember like we had fast internet and a stream and like, I could stream MySpace through like the PA space, the PA speaker there. I remember like after hours I would close down the shop and, listening to number 12 Looks Like You on full fucking blast and like sit there with this full stack trying to like, okay, what key is he tapping in here? Blah, 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 blah. But yeah, I mean, it's just I've always just had a affinity for wacky guitar playing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it if you can like make pull something like that off, it's hard to do, man. I feel
Yeah,
like having that your own little like unique spin on guitar playing these days is, like you said, it's few and far between. It's guys like Tosin and Tim and all those guys that are like trying something different other than like verse, chorus, verse, solo,
right.
bridge, all that kind of or breakdown, all that kind of
You
stuff. No,
you
nothing
hear it,
against all that, by the way.
yeah, yeah. You hear it in the core playing of those musicians, though, too. You know what I mean? Like everything from the way that the kick drum sounds on a Polyphia record is Polyphia. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like it's just like I totally I hear those types of bands and I feel for it, because growing up. For myself, it was always like you heard how somebody did this Van Halen lick or whatever, and then it was like you deconstruct it and figure out a way to do it your own way,
Right.
and that's what separates the people that are, just have really great technique versus people that, step outside the box and make up a new technique.
Yeah,
Uh,
I will say another guitar player that I find really interesting that is a super unique style, and they're not really a metal band, but Thomas Eric from Fall of Troy. That
oh
dude
yeah, dude, I love
is
that guy.
insane. Like I
Yeah.
love his guitar style, and like I always try to push that on people who are like into metal. And I'm like, if you want something unique, like listen to the way this guy plays, and he does that while singing and screaming and all this stuff. And yeah,
So
I love his work.
yeah, I love Fall Troy so much. That's crazy you said that. Talking about us playing a few shows over the past few years, or well, before COVID,
Mhm.
one of our shows that we did was we played in Detroit with Arsonist Get All the Girls. They did like a little
Yeah.
reunion tour back in the day. Um, that dude from Fall of Troy was living in Detroit at the time and was at that show.
Oh
And
wow.
I didn't even know because like I wasn't paying attention. I was just there and like I said, I sit in the back and kind of just rehearse like warm up and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And like during our set, I don't remember exactly what happened, but something happened. Well, it's like in between songs, and like I think there was a little scuffle, because there's like hardcore kids and techie weird kids and stuff, and somebody got punched or something. And from the back of the room, that dude from Fall of Troy was like just screaming, was like, "Shut the fuck up! I'm trying to watch their guitar player shred." And
That's awesome.
yeah, so I was like, holy shit, who is that? And he came up after we played and was just been like, oh, I've been a fan of yours since we played together years ago. And I was like, holy shit, that's crazy. I've been a fan of yours since before we were a band.
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah, that was
man,
a that
that's
was a
fucking
fun
awesome.
little, yeah, that is rad.
Yeah, I
That was
thought
a
he lived
rad
in Washington.
experience.
So,
He was living he struggled with substance as well.
mm.
And he moved away from everybody for a few years and just ended up in Michigan. And he's a very charismatic individual. I don't know if you've ever met him.
Yeah, I met him once after a show, but
Yeah.
it's one of those like real brief, like, hey man, good show, love your guitar playing
Yeah.
kind of deals.
Again, he's one of those people where at his core, he's a weird person. Like all of his music and his playing and his structure is because he's that person, you know what I mean? And not weird in a weird way,
Oh,
like weird in a not weird in a negative way. Like I'm weird. Like I'm also a very strange human being. Um, but like that's what makes me me, and that's why See You Next Tuesday is See You Next Tuesday. Whereas like, you just take like an average guy that just appreciates metal and like, their output is could be something different sounding, but it's not like Mr. Bungle, it's not Dillinger
right.
Escape Plan. The guys in Dillinger Escape Plan have to be fucking weirdos.
Yeah. Yeah, they're I think that uniqueness too like helps with the music. If you have just
Yeah,
a
for
bunch of
sure.
stale frontmen, and no offense to any band out there, it's like this, but
Yeah.
uh it doesn't come across the same way. You got to have those weirdos out there.
But you also have to have music also has to have, and I say cookie cutter, but I don't mean it that way, but there has to be like those bands that are repeatable and keep people interested in the scene and help people like, like music, like, one of the music I listen to the most, which is weird, is like gore grind. I listen to a lot of gore grind.
Yeah.
And that's what I listen to when I'm at work. It's just what I like that just gets me through my day. I'm a mailman. And it is not a genre for everybody.
No.
You know, like most people are turned off by it overall because it's just noise. And I totally understand that, but I like it. And it's not something that you can show somebody that's just getting into heavy music. And that's what it is. You know what I mean? Like there has to be bands in every tier also.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing wrong with, Joe and Adam and David hanging out together and play some breakdowns at their local VFW hall. Like that's awesome. We need that too.
All right, and I'll edit all this out, so don't worry about that.
Sure.
Um, yeah, man, you make a great point because I've said this a few times in the early days of the podcast when I was like starting out doing all these history episodes about the 80s. And it was true even back then, like in the 80s and 90s, you had these pretty run of the mill bands. And people give those kind of bands a lot of shit because they're quote unquote generic. But like you said, you need those bands to elevate everything else that's in the genre.
Yeah.
Otherwise, how are you going to know, like, oh man, that band fucking rules because of this band just being the way they are, like no frills, just playing what they love. And I
Yeah.
I think I agree with you 100%. I think it's very important to have that, and also just for gateways, like people. I'm just going to use Slayer as an example. No shade to Slayer, but somebody might listen to Slayer and it's old by today's standards and kind of quote unquote generic for what's out today. But I mean, that
Right.
could be somebody's gateway into like your band or Dillinger or who knows what. Um,
I mean, same with like Slipknot. You know what I mean? Like
right.
Slipknot was one of my early experiences with heavy music too. Ozfest 99, I think it
Sounds right.
was,
Yeah.
where they were like on the side stage. And I remember like seeing that and being like, what the fuck are all these dudes doing up there? Like there's so many people and they're all wearing masks. And I wasn't really into the gimmicky thing back then, but
Yeah.
I remember they started playing and, like songs like Eyeless and Wait and Lead and, like it was, that needed to happen. That shit needed to happen for me as a musician, for a lot of people as a musician. There's a reason that millions of people stream that band every day. It's
Yep.
because they're a pinnacle part of everything. So from there, there's so many bands that spawned because of them, and then so many bands that spawned from those bands, and so many local bands that are doing exactly what those bands are doing, and it's just like this pyramid that all leads up to the top of the band that originated it. But I'm just kind of babbling at this point.
No, no,
But
I
yeah,
agree,
man,
man.
it's all important stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of people give shit to Slipknot, and they do shady stuff, so I get that. They've kicked some members out, and they've had a lot die on them. So I mean, obviously, there's some turmoil going on within that band, but at the same time,
Yeah.
like some of their music is so like game changing. It's fuck it, whatever.
I mean, I still think Iowa is a pretty incredible album, man. There's some
Hmm.
really angry stuff on there. Like some of those
Hmm.
guitar riffs, man, just go hard. And that tuning, that
And
drop beat tuning that they play in.
yeah, and some of the just weird marketing stuff they do with like all the members, like there's that short video they put out where like all of them were in a room and they all had like blood, like a mask over their mask with like blood stains, like they're all dead and stuff. And it's like they just do cryptic weird shit, and they have money and they can, and
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's awesome. It's a lot. I follow them a lot more than Metallica. Metallica to me at this point are just some fucking old dudes.
I didn't think 72 Seasons was that bad, to be honest.
No, I mean I've never been a Metallica fan.
Fair
Also, like
enough.
I grew up, they were never on my radar for music. Megadeth, like that
Yeah.
era of stuff was always too basic for me. And I know there's probably a lot of people out there that would be like, "What the fuck?" Blah blah blah. I did like Slayer and Pantera, so I grew up with that stuff. But Slayer and Pantera were definitely way more out of the box than Metallica and Megadeth.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like Metallica was basic pentatonic scales to me. Like every song had five notes and five chords max. But like you listen to, like Great Southern Trendkill, like every fucking song on that record is in different tuning. That's that's Dimebag Darrell. That's genius.
Yeah, there's been a lot of interesting discourse lately. If like I don't know if you follow like guitar YouTubers or anything like that, but there's I'm not gonna name names, but there's one guy in specific that I've been watching that's like really anytime Kirk Hammett does something controversial, he really takes him to task and he's like he just breaks down like what a mediocre guitar player he kind of is, and when he's like shit talking like all these other guitar players like Kirk is, and he's
Yeah.
like, "Oh, you think that solos are boring and like nobody should play them? Well, what about this solo where you like half-assed it?" And I was like, "Damn, man, he's going hard on Kirk for him talking shit." And I think it's
Yeah,
funny
I mean,
because they're like you said, those like pentatonic scales that it's people are really like picking that apart these days.
well, it's because of YouTube. I recently, not recently, a few years ago, I was watching a video. It was Tosin Abasi and Tim Henson and a YouTube guy. Shit, what is his name? He's an older guy.
Is it Rick Beato?
Rick Beato. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, you've seen the same video where it's those
yeah,
three sitting in a room together. Wonderful video if anybody out there wants to watch some good conversation of
he's
men,
awesome.
like just of masterful musicianship. But they kind of talk about it's funny because you sit there and you see like this, Rick Beato is an older guy, came from a different generation, very classically trained, an absolute shredder,
Yeah,
but in a bebop jazz kind of way. You know what I mean? Like he
yeah,
he could jump around some chords that would spin heads around people. And then you have Tosin, who's like another generation. Then you have Tim, that's yet another generation. And arguably, Tim is the most talented person in that room because
yep,
he came up his entire career. He came up with YouTube.
yep,
You know what I mean? Rick Beato was an adult finding YouTube, and Tosin Abasi was in the middle of his guitar career when YouTube came out. And YouTube has been such an insurmountable tool to take regular guitar players out there like myself, somebody that just learned to play guitar in their basement at 14 and, you know, to a 14-year-old like Tim Henson who played a guitar and saw these YouTube videos of tutorials of them showing him how to do Tosinabasi stuff. Like it's just like the level of musicianship is just the bar, like in the 80s, yeah, Kirk Hammett was like the fucking bar. If you could do and with a whammy and or the wah pedal, like you hit the bar. And since then, the bar has been pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. Now it's just like, nothing there's no bar anymore. Like it's just the bar is continuously pushed so much that it's stuff like, like Zombie Shark that's featured on our newest record. Stuff like him where he's doing stuff where it sounds like shredding on guitar and it's just so different and it's just pushing that bar yet again, you know what I mean? And I think YouTube has such a huge impact on music for people, like, you know.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, okay, so we were talking about YouTube people, and I wanted to touch on that real quick. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so I think uh, I think it is awesome how much like it's been elevating guitar playing to the point, where you have all those guys showcasing. I forget who does it. There's that guy that does like the shred collab every year and gets like all these YouTubers or just people who are on the
Oh,
internet to
awesome.
like collab a into just a giant 20-30 minute solo. It's insane.
Yeah.
Um, and that's really cool to see because like you'll see a lot of guitar players you've never heard of before, and it's just like, damn, this person's pretty rad. Like,
There's a lot of talented people out there too. It's
yeah,
insane.
yeah, and I think I'm sure you'll agree with this. The landscape of how music is produced and put out into the world has changed so much that like you don't even necessarily have to be in a band anymore to make music. Like you can just do a whole internet studio thing, and that's all you need.
Yeah, literally, I mean, right before we had to do this little break thing, we were just talking about Curly Swope from Zombie Shark.
Yes.
He's a one-man band. Actually, most of the well, I should say a handful of the artists that are on Relapses were all like, mostly one-band projects. Death Trippa, I think he's got a drummer that plays with him now, but Zombie Shark's a one-man band. But yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the things I was trying to ask them, but they weren't really sure. So, how did you go about choosing which artist to remix which song? And like, did you hand pick them? Did you already have these people in mind? Like, how did you approach putting that all together?
Um, Sort of. I mean, every track really has its own life story,
Right.
honestly. Um, some of them were people that we're friends with. Child of Night, Zombie Shark. Those were two that we're friends with. Rich Lombardi and Kyle Medina. Just again, just some friends, people I talk to all the time.
Yeah.
And just in different ways, everybody, like I said, everybody's kind of got their own story. And then there's there were some that I've never met before, but I've just been a fan of their music. Um, like the John Connor brothers, which most people are familiar with them from their band. They're in a band called LLNN. I don't know if you're
Okay.
familiar with either of that.
I'm not actually. No.
They're very good. That's how I found out about them is the band. They're in a band called LLNN. They're these
Okay.
two brothers from Denmark, and the LLNN is like just the heaviest music to like theatrical like movie scores. Like the electronics behind their stuff is this big, huge, atmospheric, like it reminds me of like big movie productions, like big space movies like Aliens and stuff, like, just that very theatrical stuff. And yeah, it translates into their John Connor stuff. I mean, their music is so deep with texture. But yeah, that was just one that I just randomly emailed them and they said yes. Death Tripper, the Thought Crimes, um, they were total strangers. Reckless Life was one that was again a stranger, but we ended up becoming pretty close friends.
Nice.
Um, Same with like Frontierer. Like I talked to Ped over the years, Pedram. Him and I have exchanged word like texts here and there, just random
Mhm.
stuff over the years. And then since doing this project, getting to work with Chad, now him and I are like best friends too. So it's really cool. Just kind of everybody. It was just a bunch of random stuff, you know what I mean? Like, and it all just came to fruition, and like every musician just brought so much to the table. Um, and it's crazy. Like the biggest thing that I personally like about the record is how cohesive it feels. Like even
Right.
though it's like a bunch of different musicians doing, and they didn't hear each other's tracks until it was released. A couple of them reached out to me and asked to hear the tracks, but some of them never asked. So I'm just like, whatever, they'll hear it eventually.
Yeah.
um, and so I mean, they didn't know what was going on. Like nobody knew to do something because this other person did it to try to make it feel like it's a fluid album. And it just so happens that it did. Like everybody did such a good job. I can't say that enough.
Yeah, it's a very you don't see records like this very often. Fox and them were talking about how you guys are really into like Fear Factory and Demanufacture back in the day and how that was
Oh yeah, hell
kind of an
yeah.
impetus and inspiration for it. But I mean, you don't really see bands remixing songs very often, or much less doing a whole album that way of remixes, especially in
Yeah,
metal.
yeah, I mean it happens. The that holy something tabernacle choir, holy damn it, I can't think of their name. I can't remember. They
Yeah, I don't
they
know.
put out a remix album a couple years ago. Holy, I think it's like Holy Mountain Tabernacle Choir. I can't remember.
Okay.
That's embarrassing.
Dude, all the
Anyway,
time I'm like, yeah, I know this name, but I can't
uh,
think of it right now because I'm on the fucking spot.
they just did some dates or doing some dates with Meth. That's the only reason I heard of them is just because I see them interact with Meth, and Meth's like our best friends.
Yeah, that band's
Um,
fucking sick.
oh my
They're
God, and
devastating.
yeah, not only are they like insanely wonderful musicians, but they're like the coolest dudes. Like the moment we met them in real life, we became best friends, and we have been since, and it's awesome. But what were we talking about before that? Oh, the remix thing. Yeah, just yeah. I mean, yeah, there's bands that do it. And I always see a lot of bands like who did it not that long ago. I think it might have been Metallica. Where didn't they do like where they had like 20 different artists redo the same song?
I'm not sure.
Yeah. Anyway, um that kind of thing, like a lot of times they'll see like they'll take like a popular song and somebody will remix it like 4 or 5 times, which is cool too. But
Yeah.
I don't know, like with this whole project, it was one of those things where sure it's a remix album, but also it's got a new track, but also like the two cyber grind songs that we made into grindcore songs, like that's weird. So I rewrote those. And then we got guest vocals on them to make him just even more hard to describe to people. But yeah, I feel like, I kept having really cool ideas when it came to the record. Um, and it was one of those like every idea is worth entertaining when it
Right.
comes to this because it's just, why not? This is so out of the box, that is what a metal band does.
I agree.
Um, and it was cool. Like everything kind of came to fruition. And it all worked out that we were able to like mirror the release of Distractions as well. Everything by one day. Obviously, with the fact that you have to release stuff on Fridays or whatever. But
Yeah.
it was released one day to the year, or 1 year to the day. One day less than a year.
Yeah.
Um, but even the singles, we had music videos for a few singles, which was really hard to pick tracks, but everything kind of was choreographed in a way to like basically like give confusion, like the reason we did the first two songs as a singles because they're the only two grindcore songs on the record, like we just wanted to get weird with it, man.
Got to reel them in.
Right. Yeah, like confuse people and see if it works. And ultimately it seems to be doing really well. Like people are listening to the record a bunch, so that's really cool.
Yeah, I was, I'm really curious about this because, you know, you can only go by so much by looking at like streams on Spotify and that. But like, how do you quantify how well something is doing these days? Because record sales are a thing of the past for the most part. Like, I'm sure you still sell records, but
No, yeah.
nowhere near as much as the early 2000s. And even then, that was like the start of the downward. Like, nobody's buying records anymore.
Uh, And and records like sell so much more than like CDs. Like think
Right.
about this. This is weird. The day that we announced Distractions and we put up the pre-order, we had like 1,000 records available. We
Hmm.
ended up selling them all within the first like 2 days or so. But we're selling like hundreds of records at a time, which none of us knew was going to happen. It was
Hmm.
crazy, just one of those like getting floored moments. Like, holy shit, people give a shit. Holy shit. Um, but anyway, I remember asking our label, like, how many CDs did we sell? We sold like, 1,000 records in 2 days. And they're like, I think we sold like 6 CDs, which is a lot.
Jesus.
It's just one. I don't know how many we've sold since, but I mean, we got a box of 25 and we sold those. So they're, I don't know. But yeah, they're not like they used to. I remember when Intervals came out, we got our copies of Intervals and it was like 6 days into a tour and they're gone and we're just like, oh, well, that's all our vinyl. It's just
Yeah,
like people
vinyl
couldn't,
is it's crazy how popular it still is, man. I got out back when the pandemic hit. I was like, I don't need all this stuff anymore. But
yeah.
it's good that that's another thing that's like keeping bands afloat is actual vinyl sales again.
It's not only keeping bands afloat, it's keeping independent record labels afloat.
Yeah,
'Cause like, I don't I don't have the money to put into this to the degree of putting everything out on my own. And like honestly, Rick and Carl from Good Fight, we're the same Rick and Carl from Ferret Records. And they've just been like family to us. And they let us do stupid stuff like a remix album and they pay for all these really cool music videos. And like yeah, I understand that they're just using our record sales to pay for it, but at the same time they're putting up the collateral, they're putting their name on it, which helps also promote the whole thing too. And like they wouldn't be able to do it if people didn't buy 1,000 copies or 2,000 copies of our record. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
um and just any record, I see like these smaller bands, like um are I'm not a vinyl collector either, but I'm definitely a supporter of music and our drummer is a vinyl collector. Like he's got a ton of
scene.
stuff. And yeah. And I'm the kind of guy that like if I really like a band, I'll message him and be like, "Hey, there's this band Organ Dealer. They're really super sick band from New Jersey. You should buy their record." And he just posted this morning a picture of that record. He never even heard of that band. He was just like, "Oh, Drew said it's good. I'll buy it." And it's got a cool looking variant. So, um, but yeah, I mean that's important. You know what I mean? Like the different variants and the cool looks and stuff and the
Yeah,
limited quantities and like there's the whole wax vessel thing, which is like he did a really lot of really cool stuff and a lot of people are pissy because some stuff is like extraordinarily overpriced in the used market for vinyl. But at the
yeah. I mean,
same
it's
time, like he put all these awesome records on vinyl that you guys didn't have. But yeah, it does suck when people tell me that they paid like $700 for a copy of our Wax Vessel record, like that shit
whoa.
makes me sad. But
Yeah, the secondary market's insane, dude. That's part of why I cashed out when I did because like it went up so high during COVID, and I had all these like super rare records, and I
yeah,
was like, I need the money. I'm out of a job. Like I don't know, and I kept like some from the band that I worked with in a couple
sure,
like test presses I have, but
sure.
other than that, man, I got rid of like 200 records because I was
Wow.
just like, I can't keep all this. The only one that I regret getting rid of, and I mean, who could have first seen this? But I had a full autographed Black Dahlia Murder discography,
Oh
even
shit.
unhollowed, the original pressing. And then Trevor
Wow.
passes away, and I was just like, "Fuck! Why did I
Uh,
get rid of all those?" But
yeah, but
to the people
yeah,
out in the world that
man.
have them, enjoy because
Yeah.
they meant a lot to me. But unfortunately, they had to be let go.
Yeah, I never had anything cool like that.
Yeah, I'm a big collector because we were talking about Fox and Rick play Magic, and I do too.
Oh yeah.
Dude, we were talking about like collecting all that stuff.
I can only imagine what this podcast was like without me.
It was a little off the rails, but it was super fun. We had a
Oh,
blast.
good.
But
Good,
yeah,
good.
and dude, I'm having a blast with you. This is so fun, like
Oh yeah.
talking about all
I'm
this, all
definitely more
this.
the dad of the band, you know, like I'm an information dumper.
Um, since we're talking about vinyl, and I kind of briefly talked to them about this. Having that physical media and all that art is another important aspect of it. And they mentioned your wife and Fox kind of like collaborated on the art. And dude, the last record, that's some of my favorite art on a record. Period. I love the color palette, everything that the way it was designed.
Distractions or relapses?
Distractions, yeah, yeah,
Oh, thank you.
dude, it's sick
Uh,
looking.
yeah, thank you. I actually have the one that Fox painted on hanging up in my living room. I don't know if oh, it's going to be all blurred out. I, Here, I'll show you.
Yeah, man, that'd be sick.
Let's see if it gets on the screen or not. Still kind of blurry, but
Yeah,
so basically what happened is I'm a big fan of mixed media and I'm a big fan and again this is kind of why Relapses was just such a great project for me to do. But I I had a lot of fun kind of orchestrating the cover art for Distractions.
hmm
So like Fox and I kind of had the our ideas in our head as far as like, you know, um what needs to happen in the image. But I had the idea from the very beginning that I wanted a photo that's painted on.
yeah,
And that was like my medium, like that was how the art needed to be kind of thing. I didn't really care necessarily, not necessarily care, but I didn't have like I didn't have a vision that went past that. So it started with my wife Lauren. She hired this model, Marissa, who's a girl that grew up here in Bay City, where I'm from, but
okay,
lives down in Detroit. And she has alopecia. So she has no hair, except for like she has like these little patches, and it's awesome because she keeps them. Um, and then she's also someone that's predestined to have breast cancer. So she had her augmentation done already in life. And I think she's
oh
in her
wow,
30s, you know, but I think everybody she in her family has like had it or died from it in their 30s and 40s. So she was just like, fuck it, if I'm gonna lose them, might as well get rid of them and be healthy.
right,
Smart girl, basically. So
yeah,
yeah, we took her out to the state park and we put all this makeup on her, and we put these white contacts in, and she totally couldn't see anything. And like I remember I kind of like would direct her, and then my wife would be like, okay, we're shooting, and she would just like do these, you know, these pretty motions and stuff, and it was just so cool. And we got like 100 awesome photos. So like
wow,
if you look at all the merch and relapses, t-shirt designs, all that stuff, like she's been utilized so much, but we just had so many photos that came out of it. So then from there we picked the photo that was going to be for the album. And for Distractions, I wanted it to be the same photo for every panel, just
yeah,
painted differently. Um, so we ended up settling on that photo, which is just absolutely perfect. Her just doing like this little motion, you know, it's like
yeah,
it's just absolutely perfect, man. She did such a great job. So then we printed those on these like foam boards. They're 20 by 20-inch foam boards. And I gave them to Fox, and he did some black paint on them, and that's what you saw hanging on my wall.
Hmm.
So it's that photo printed on a board, and he painted with it just a regular black acrylic paint.
Man.
So from there, he had a photographer friend of his take digital photos of them and rendered them to digital files. From there, he did additional effects and drawing and did all the text and all that stuff on each one. So we did 5 panels. We ended up only using 4 of them. We have a couple that we've been planning on doing some sort of auction for. It's just nothing's come up yet that I don't know what we're gonna do with them, but we're eventually gonna let them go for a good cause to some fans. So
Yeah,
something
that's
to
a good
look
idea,
forward
man.
to.
I love getting art, and especially having like original, the most I've ever bought is like art prints, from like
Yeah.
Jacob Bannon or somebody like that. But
Yeah. Yeah. We a long time ago. So the tattoo from Converge that I have on my arm is from Petitioning the Empty Skies,
mhm,
those like angel figurines. So those were actually drawn by Aaron Turner of ISIS,
yep.
and it was a painting. When I years ago when we first signed to Ferret Records, I got to go over to Carl Severson's house. He took us in for a night when we're on tour through New Jersey, and in his living room he had that painting,
Oh
and it's
man.
it's fucking giant. It's
Dude.
absolutely giant. Like it's floor to ceiling giant. But yeah,
Man.
man, it was so cool. It had to have been 8 feet tall. It was so cool.
I really wish somebody would do like a small museum exhibit of like actual heavy metal art, get like all those original Vincent Locke pieces.
That'd be so cool.
Oh man, like yeah. Yeah, I can't imagine
There's so many
people
artists
wouldn't love
too,
it.
um like that one dude that did the Fuming Mouth record that just died. He did like
Yeah.
I think he did like a Black Dahlia record, or there's that guy has a bunch of pieces out there. I'm sure those paintings exist. Like somebody out there has them.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Whether it's the band or one of the dudes at the label, or just it got auctioned off and some random fan has it or whatever, like every cool art or album art that's out there that was a painting, somebody owns it.
Yep. Yeah, that's the crazy thing, man. Like I can't imagine owning something like that, but it'd be fucking rad.
Yeah. So yeah, from there, we had all these photos from Marissa. When Relapses came about, once I settled on an artist, which was this artist I found in Pennsylvania named Jay Echevarria or
Okay.
Echevarria. I'm not 100% sure on how to say their last name. I should inquire on that. But just super talented artist, and an artist that also shared with me that they had gone through addiction as well. So they understood addiction, and Distractions was all about overcoming addiction. And Relapses to me was what it looks like on the other side of addiction. Because I'm 3 years sober. I'm over 3 years sober. 2019, or I'm sorry, October 19th of 2020 was my last drink.
Wow.
Um, yeah, so I'm over three years, and Jay that was doing the artwork was in a similar boat. Hadn't had their addiction in some 3 years as well. And we kind of just talked about how Distractions was like this darkness taking over this pretty girl. So Relapses ended up becoming an explosion of color and flowers and stuff to represent, like the growth of somebody after addiction. You know what I mean? So like there was
Yeah.
a lot of thought went into Relapses too, like the artwork wasn't just, something thrown together. Like everything about it just was and even like the song titles too, I went back and was talking to Chris about the titles because in Distractions I named all the songs, and they were all Frank Sinatra song titles. And because you can't copyright a song title. So in relapses, we decided to have the names change, and I just let Fox choose song titles that would be based on the lyrics. So he actually ended up naming all those tracks for all the other artists that remixed them.
Damn. I think when you come from a place of addiction and you're really trying to throw yourself into a piece of art, um, the the what's the word I'm looking for here? The authenticity of it comes across. It's not just like trying to churn out something for the sake of churning it out. It's like I am putting everything that I've been through into this, and
Yeah.
having that like personal level of that thrown into a record. It do you want people to like really take that to heart when they're listening to it, or do like what's your level of how you think people should consume it, or is it just personal choice? If somebody wants it at surface level, that's what it is. If they want to look deeper, that's what they want.
I the second for sure. I don't like here's something. Fox never likes to tell what his interpretation of a song lyrics are.
Yeah,
I don't write any of the lyrics, so I don't have any of the words behind the music. But most people will relate to lyrics versus music.
sure.
Um, and he hates to share, excuse me, with somebody um his interpretation because he wants people to interpret those songs, those lyrics in their own way. Because if I tell you my interpretation of it, you're going to interpret it the way I interpret it going forward.
Yeah,
And with distractions musically, it's the same thing for me. Like I poured my heart into that record. And when I listen to it, I 100% feel a certain way. And it might not feel that way to somebody else. So like it's not necessarily my place to share somebody. Like I will tell you I don't get sad when I listen to it though. Like
yeah,
for me there's a lot of memories tied to that record. So I'm never going to feel it the same way as a listener does. And it's funny to me because some people tell me that the record is one of their favorite records they've ever heard. And I've also had people tell me that um the record sounds like shit. So it's one of those things where it's like, everybody is going to interpret the record differently. For somebody that's not a fan of something avant-garde, if somebody's not a fan of something that's got a lot of grindcore influence but isn't grindcore,
yeah,
then it's not for you. But for somebody that's artistic, it's somebody that likes to feel something and somebody that likes to think, um, or somebody that just likes something that sounds sonically like just heavy. Because that's what I went for. Like it's a very bass heavy record. It's a very dark tonality to the record. When it was
oh
mastered,
yeah,
I had him bring a lot of the high end out of the record. To me, it felt harsh and inappropriate for the mix. Just because every song has this darkness to the chords and the note choices and stuff. So it's like, yeah, there is an atmosphere that I built with that record for sure. Will everybody interpret it the same way? Absolutely not. But that's not the intention at
yeah,
all. You know what I mean? Like everybody's meant to interpret it their way.
yeah, yeah.
Hopefully their interpretation is positive and they like it. But if not, like, also, I understand and no hard feelings. You know what I mean? Just don't be a dick to me about it. That's when it's like I remember listening to like review podcasts, not the ones where they were brought me on to talk, but
Yeah.
the ones where they just listen to it and they talk about the record. There's a lot of people that said a lot of really nice things out there, and it's really gratifying and validating for all the work that I put in. But there was this one podcast, and to this day, I'm just like, man, why would you just put a podcast out there and just shit talk something? But like they reviewed multiple records on the podcast, and the other two songs were just symphonic deathcore to the T.
Uh-oh.
So like for fans of Lorna Shore exclusively.
Right.
And then we were like wedged in between, and they talked about Hey Look No Crying, which I get, it has a breakdown in it, sure. but like, man, they ate it apart. Like they ripped it apart. They were just like, this sounds terrible. The breakdown is too hard to follow, and there's too much blast beats, and the vocals are too quiet in the mix, and there's too much low end. And it's just like, dude, if you had any idea like how stupid you sound right now.
Yeah, I feel
But
like sometimes I definitely tried to avoid this, man. I don't really like shit talking on my podcast because everybody is just trying to make a piece of art, and like you said,
right. And
everything's
it's
open
it's
for
up to
interpretation.
interpretation.
Yeah, it's not always going to be for me. I may not like it, but it doesn't mean somebody else doesn't like it. So
I
I try to walk that line. Every now and then I'll be like, I fucking hate this, but that's just me. I'm not saying it's shit because of that.
right. And at the same time, you're not going to do an entire podcast. Like you said
Yeah,
earlier at this, that you had some bad experiences with guests and you didn't air those episodes,
right.
right? Because that's the humane thing to do. Like you didn't have a good time. It wouldn't translate to a good time to your audience, so you didn't air it. If I was doing a review, blind or not, like it's not live. Like you recorded this, edited it, and then put it online. You went back and listened to this and scrutinized the fact that you're shit talking a band and decided it's a good idea to green like that and throw that up there and then tag them in it.
Oh
Like
no.
that's what's fucked up. Like I was talking to an interviewer from Germany last year, and at the end, he's like, "Is there anything you want to ask me?" And I was like, really giddy, and he was a really great interview. And I was like, honestly, I'm just gonna be blunt. Did you like Distractions? Because he wasn't very forthcoming.
Yeah,
And he just like deadpanned and was just like, "You wouldn't be a guest on my podcast if I didn't absolutely fucking love it."
right.
Because there are thousands of records getting released all the time. Why would I waste my time interviewing something I don't like?
That's how I roll too, man. If I don't like
Yeah,
something, I kind of don't really want to waste my time with it.
yeah.
It's a little bit of favoritism on my part. I get it, but you know,
But at the same time, like there's plenty of releases out there that you do like, and there's a
right.
finite of time and a finite amount of episodes that you even need to upload. Like you don't
Yeah.
need to put up 10 episodes of your same podcast every day,
No.
right? With that said, you'll never do a podcast on every record that you even like,
Nope. I wish I could, but
right?
it would
So
be every day.
why waste your time being shitty?
Yeah.
For all those podcasters out there that just shit talk albums, like man, shame on you.
No, I agree,
find
man.
some find some time to do something good. Don't waste your time doing something bad.
Okay, so we're running out of time here a little bit. So with that, what's kind of the future here, man? It seems like you're, running all cylinders. You're super fucking creative over all these past few years and currently,
Yeah.
like what's the plan, man? Shows, more albums, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like, I'm in a really great place in my life, like my home life is really awesome. I'm married. I got, a bunch of dogs and stuff. I got a decent enough job that lets me do stupid shit like, have a studio at my house. And it's Um, it was also a really awesome experience doing like the collaborative type of stuff that we did, working with Frontier on a track and and writing a song that sounds nothing like either of our bands. That type of stuff is
Yeah.
just really intriguing to me. And so yeah, I mean, there's some stuff in the works. Obviously we don't want to let See Next Tuesday fans down and not put out some See Next Tuesday stuff as well. So I mean, definitely expect some more stuff, but also expect some weird shit too, man. Like
Absolutely.
I hope we kind of get the name for being a band that does something that's out of the box for sure, because we're gonna keep trying and hopefully, fingers crossed it does something. For touring, we do have a 16-day tour coming up in April with Mouth Breather. And then we have some different friends on different legs of the tour. Mutilatred's doing some dates. Noisy Neighbors is doing our Texas dates. Implosive Disgorgence is doing our Florida dates. And then
Okay.
Thin is also jumping on in Florida and heading north for us for 6 days total. So Mouth Breather, us, and Thin. for a majority of a tour is going to be fucking awesome. But yeah, it'll be the biggest tour since our reunion. Um, but that's pretty much like going to be the pushing of it. Like I said, we're adults and we got jobs, so it's not
Yeah.
like we can just we're also playing avant-garde music too. You know what I mean? I'm not saying like we're like a harsh noise artist, but we're playing a mixture of death metal and grindcore and mathcore and experimental stuff. And that's not Taylor Swift. I'm not going to be able to quit my job and tour the world like I was in my 20s. But in my 20s, I didn't need money. Like I didn't have money ever. I got home from tour and ate peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and then I went on tour and ate peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Like that's what it was like. But I was in my 20s and I didn't care. I wouldn't exchange it for anything. But yeah, so I mean, writing new music is definitely on the docket. I'm actually working on some stuff as we speak. So expect a lot of stuff coming out of us, whether it's working with somebody else doing something, or just putting out some new songs, man, because it's a ton of fun. And again, people don't seem to completely hate it overall. So, as long as we got some positivity coming back from me, it's still cathartic enough for me to keep doing.
Yeah, man. I mean, I'm definitely glad to have you guys back. I love both those. The new remix record was a real like eye opener for me to check out some different stuff. So,
Oh, cool.
um, yeah, I'm stoked to see what you guys do. And congratulations on being sober, man. I don't know if people
Yeah, I
say that to you
appreciate
enough,
that.
but
Thank you.
that's a lot. Yeah. So,
Yeah, I
congrats, man.
appreciate that. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
All right. Well, thank you for being on the podcast, man.
Absolutely.
It was a blast, dude. I seriously appreciate your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Whenever you get it posted up, tag us in it and stuff like that. We'll
Yep.
share everything. So.